That's a no. That's a no if ever I've heard one. I'll keep building like a Jenga
Do
tower
you do that?
until
I do
we
that with books and boxes,
achieve
and like you're currently on the dog
optimal.
food box at the minute. How bad it is.
I've got a jewelry box, a little stationery box, and now my phone, which might, I don't know, maybe if I do this, I'm going to
It's
do
not
a
like I can't
podcast.
hear you.
Well, no, but
Just
we want it to be
I want to hear
quality.
that.
Hmm. Oh, here we go. I will use the choir social fund
What?
petty cash. Oh, yeah, babe.
Oh,
I've got like all the money, literally
who's the real
dozens of
treasurer here?
pounds.
Nice. Are you ready?
I sure am. Let me get this Word document front and center, and I am ready to go when you are.
Ooh. Hi, Cara.
Hi, Vicky.
How are you?
I am doing well, thank you. I am
Good.
doing very well. Looking forward to an exciting weekend starting bright and early tomorrow.
Oh my gosh. So welcome to She Changed History, listeners. Me and Cara are going on a little expedition tomorrow morning at 4:30 a.m. And we're hoping it will cleanse our souls
Mm,
and
I
be the
think
answer to all our problems.
I'm my ambitions are less high than that. I just
Oh,
hope you're still speaking to me because you might see a side of me that I try to keep hidden. I am not an early morning person. I will be nauseous
no.
and gray.
Great.
Yeah. But it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
Where are we going? We're going to like an RSPB reserve, which is where the birds live. And we're going into nature to listen to the dawn chorus, so the morning chorus. Because May apparently is the perfect time. Tomorrow's the last day of May, and apparently we've got one of the best
Oh,
spots in the country to do this in. So we were like, we have to go and do this. So that's what we're doing.
absolute quality. I
4:30
didn't
a.m.
realize the May thing. That's
Oh, apparently. I'll show you the magazine. Maybe I'll bring the magazine with me. It's one of my new thing. I've told you about this, haven't I?
you
Um,
have, yeah.
yeah, that it's like one of my lifelines for my mental health right now. So,
I'm just chuckling because you're offering to provide documentary evidence. I trust you. I believe you.
oh,
I
I
just
care
didn't
about my
know.
sources. You know this. You know this.
Yes.
Sure.
Cite your sources.
So it's Friday, so we're hanging out on Friday night, and then we'll be hanging out in a good 7 hours.
Yeah. And then Vicky will never speak to me again because I'll be so grumpy. She'll be like, why do I know this person?
What is happening? No, no, no. It's gonna be beautiful. We're gonna enjoy
It
it.
will be. It will be.
But Cara's got a story for us today. So off you
I
go,
sure
Cara.
have. So today we are going to be going into a period of history that I have largely avoided up till now, in that we're talking ancient history, not even like 19th, 18th century. We're going way, way back. But
I'm so proud of you.
I've got a little, thank you, outside of my comfort zone. I've got a little intro to kind of get us there, which
Yes,
is
please.
firmly rooted in the 20th century. So bear with. A woman uses her gift for communication to solidify her father's grip on the innovative business he managed to create. Her success rests on her insight into what it is that people want, what they love. And she loves it too. But when her father dies, an interloper, hungry for power, threatened by her popularity, moves to banish her forever. It reads like a plot line from Succession, but the tale is so much older. Meet Enheduanna, high priestess of the world's first known empire and the first known author to capture storytelling with the written word.
I'm sorry. The first empire and the first author.
Yeah, we got all the firsts today.
Oh my
There's
God.
more. But
Oh,
wait, there's more. We're going to bang in a few more first before the
great.
episode is over.
In love
So,
already.
citing my sources, taking my cue from you, the BBC had an article called Enheduanna, the world's first named author. There's an excellent TED Ed video, which is a gorgeous little animation. Maybe I can find a way to link to it. An article from the New Yorker, which is called The Struggle to Unearth the World's First Author. There was an exhibition about her called She Who Wrote, and that was cited on the Morgan Museum website. And there's a website called Aramco World. I don't know the first thing about it, but it talks about Enheduanna and whether she was, in fact, the first author. So
Ooh.
there we have it. Um, yeah, reading about her has been exciting because, we love stories, we love books. And I never thought before my friend Phil, hey Phil, suggested that this might be a good topic, that someone was the first. And I certainly did not dream that it would have been a woman that was the first author. So to kind of pinpoint her in history and in the timeline of literature, there's a quote here, if you're happy to go for it.
Enheduanna lived 1500 years before Homer, 1700 years before Sappho, and 2000 years before Aristotle.
So they chose those examples because they are the answers that people will give if they're on the spot in a pub quiz and asked,
Yeah,
okay, who's the
of
first
course.
author? These are the people that come to mind, but she's massively predating them. We're
Yeah.
going way back. Over 4,000 years ago, around 3,400 to 2000 BCE,
Wow.
somewhere in that time
This
frame.
is the earliest I think we've ever done. This is very
It's the
exciting.
cradle of civilization stuff, and it shows. So we are literally cradle of civilization, the region between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers, and it's the area where on a modern map we would see Iraq. So it's
Mhm.
that kind of region. Historically, that was known as Mesopotamia, and in Enheduanna's time, the going must have been pretty good because it was enjoying one of those periods of history where novel things, all these firsts, are popping up left, right, and center, which is usually a sign of prosperity
Yeah.
or diabolical warfare. But in this case, largely prosperity.
Flip a coin.
Yeah, sometimes both. Uh, so this period of time coincides with the world's first cities, and new trade routes were opening up between these cities to sort of facilitate their growth. To support that trade network, people started needing to record information in a new way. And the new
Okay.
tool that was developed to accommodate that was writing. It was a form of language, a form of notation called cuneiform, which it's like pictographic symbols that represent sounds, and they press them into a wet clay tablet with a little reed stylus, which sounds charming. You can smell it, like you can just imagine, as well as those sort of like hands on technical advances. Mesopotamia was the first example of a ruler. He would probably have said unifying. The people who he unified would probably say conquering.
Oh, oh no.
All the surrounding lands. Yeah, it's a story, depending on the perspective, it's a very
Yeah,
different
fair.
story. But he, at any rate, was credited with bringing about the world's first empire. And the
Oh,
ruler that did that was Sargon of Akkad. And as it happens, this fella is Enheduanna's father.
nice. So
So
already quite a lot to live up to if that's your dad, isn't
yeah,
it?
super high born. And just for him to have the notion to kind of
Right?
throw over the nation state, the ambition and the drive and the vision, yeah, that's a lot to live up to.
In my head, I'm picturing like tribes. I don't
I
know. It's
think, yeah, I think that's it. I think he was quite successfully running a CAD and thought, well, this is going all
I'm doing
right.
great.
Let's see what else we can do. So in their time in Mesopotamia, religion was inseparable from
Yeah.
politics. It was the temples were all through the city. They were linked to the royal courts. Nobility were responsible for performing some of the rituals to try to win the gods' favor for their nation.
Wow.
And when things were going well, a lot like that, like ancient Greek model,
Yeah.
you sort of think,
That's what
oh,
I
the
was just
gods are
thinking.
smiling.
Yeah.
It's probably the most familiar example to me as well. So with those sort of thoughts in mind, Enheduanna, born as a noblewoman, is expected to enter the religious service. That is what she is going to have to do.
Okay.
So with that in mind, she's given an education, and she's educated in both the language of her father's city and the first city that he went and colonized effectively.
Nice.
So Sumerian and Akkadian. She's learning both at the same time. she's also learning mathematics. She's learning how to write this cuneiform
Yeah.
language. It's only been knocking around for 300 years, but they're giving her,
Fair.
you know, everything, the keys to the castle. So immense privilege of being an elite person. But I don't want to give the impression that it was only because of her status that she enjoyed everything that she enjoyed, because it seems that in that time in Sumeria, in Akkad, women were productive members of society. It wasn't an equal society by any stretch. It definitely was a patriarchy. However, if you look at the artifacts from the time, they loved a vase, loved to carve some
Oh,
stuff on a vase, putting it right on there. These cylinder
vase for our
seals.
British listeners.
Oh, vase. Sorry. Yes,
I
vase.
immediately
Um,
copied you. That's what I was laughing at. I couldn't believe how like floppy I was. Immediately, I was like,
suggestible.
vase, vase.
Yeah, you've been growing up listening to American TV shows. It's what we do. That's our empire. But at any rate, so the vase,
The
the cylinder
vase.
seals, the tablets, you see these images of just ordinary women and they're playing flutes with their hair flying, they're
Oh,
weaving, they're farming, they could
they're
own land.
contributing. Yeah.
Yeah, they were traders and they were able to own property and pass it to their
Nice.
descendants. So they also, oh God, this is a diversion, but it's one I will enjoy. So you're
Right.
going to have to
Here we go.
indulge me. Sorry. The fashion, as I'm scrolling through trying to find very serious and focused things, I did get slightly distracted by the image that I've included and which I will put on the
Oh
socials.
my gosh, yes, please.
How stunning is that? This is the
Yes.
funerary ensemble of Queen Puabi, and it's absolutely
That is a
opulent. So
headdress and a half.
I
Oh,
just thought I'd throw that in there. I don't know that people walking around doing their day to day, like milking the cow
why
or
not?
whatever, are wearing this. If I had access to it today, I would be putting it on right now.
Damn
But
right.
anyway,
And also, it's got
so
that kind of like Anna of Cleves kind of hairstyle
it
thing going on. It's
has.
like their hair's in ribbons.
And some African vibes, like a
Yeah.
Maasai, like capelet sort of vibe. It's
Mhm.
really
And
beautiful and
shiny.
so shiny. Anyway,
Love.
sorry, went down a little bit of a
No,
rabbit hole
I
there.
think more of this, more fashion, history, fashion.
That would be an amazing pod.
Mm.
Um, Back in the room, women are out there. They're doing jobs that the city needs. They are also the major stakeholders in the religion, kind of at every level. And that in turn is part of the apparatus of the state. And that brings us back neatly to Enheduanna and her role within Sargon's empire. So his seat of leadership, the place where he's from, is the city state of Akkad. When Enheduanna becomes of age, she is appointed as the high priestess in the next most important city state of his empire, which is called Ur. It's
Mm.
spelled U-R. I don't know how to pronounce it properly. I'm going with Ur.
That's fine. So
So,
that's like almost Prince of Wales vibe, I imagine.
yeah,
Yeah.
like a regent being sent
Yeah.
out to solidify you're exactly right. It wasn't an accident. He was a clever cookie and he knew that having this respected religious figure who had
Mhm.
his interests at heart in
Yes.
probably quite a testy situation was a fortifying move. So that
Yes.
is what he
He's
did.
smart. Yeah. Good decision.
He was smart and it was right because she was so into it. She loved
Yeah.
being
Did
a
she
high
like
priestess.
thrive?
She
Oh,
absolutely did. So she had the vision once in this position to take writing, which, was a tool for business. It was like the Excel of its day. And she transformed it into something that could glorify and humanize the gods. And I've got a little like,
oh, so she like applied it to something else.
yeah, she took this
Mm.
technology and went, we can use this for more. Like when we all got emails and it was supposed to be to say, Dear Mrs. Smith, have you received the parcel? Now it's like we use it for
Everything.
very different
Yeah.
things. So she's sort of doing that for her purview. And she's taking these gods, and the stories have always been quite highbrow and inaccessible and dry. And
Right.
she's creating stories wherein, and this is a little inline quote, they suffered, they fought, they loved, and they responded to human pleading. So she was creating what Octavia Butler would have described as a good story, compellingly told. So she knew by marking them down on tablets that the written poems, just like the orders for goods or receipts, could easily be distributed throughout the entire
Mm.
empire.
She
So,
invented the newspaper. Yeah.
and she had the foresight to understand that the best way to win around the people of these disparate cities was to call those gods interchangeably by the names that they knew them by. So,
Classic. Love it.
right, she was bringing everyone in and combining these mythologies of all of these different cities, kind of taking on the role of the PR
Yes, that's
face
just
of
what
the
I was
Akkadian
thinking.
Empire.
Oh, it's so clever. Because that's what they do even in movies and stuff, isn't it? They change some of the jokes or some of the, oh, I don't know, the food on the table so it matches the culture. So
Just to
they
like
get it a bit more.
to make you feel included. And
Yeah.
so she had, I think she had a great deal of emotional intelligence to understand the need for that, to achieve it, and to think to write the stories in such a way that they resonated emotionally with
Mm.
people. And people knew what she was up to. There's a note here, a quote for you to read from a scribe who was transcribing a copy of her poems for her father to read, and he added a little postscript.
Oh, and isn't it weird as well that they've managed to translate it?
Mm.
Because, like, obviously I'm reading English. Isn't that fascinating that it's survived?
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that and how that came to pass, because there
Okay.
are certainly, like in the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, there are tablets written in cuneiform or similar pictographic language which simply have not been translated. So
Right.
it
Yeah. Yeah.
literally could say anything.
Anything.
But in this case, we possibly because of these trade routes and the cross-pollination of different cultures, those symbols had to be more broadly understood. So there would have been, like the Rosetta Stone type of
Yes.
idea, a commonality with a language that still exists now. So therefore, we get to read her actual words or their actual
Oh,
words.
this is so cool. I love it.
Kind of cool.
So the quote that has made it through the years says, "My king, something has been produced that no person had produced before."
Which I think,
High
as well as
praise.
just being a cool thing to say, highlights that these men were not particularly adverse to having a powerful woman,
Fair.
doing cool
Meritocracy.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for all of the political side of her work, which I'm sure was not accidental, she genuinely did seem to be devoted to her gods. She was a high priestess of Nana, who was the moon god,
The
but
moon.
her real heart was with his daughter Inanna, who was also known as Ishtar. And Ishtar Inanna is the goddess of love, sex, and war. I'm
Oh,
like, cool.
funny how they're all linked.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a, shrinking violet. She's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
she's she's a lot. She's a bad bitch and she doesn't mind.
Mhm.
Right? So the passion that Enheduanna felt comes through because in her poems, her hymns to Inanna, it contains the first written use of the word I and the first literature that represents human emotion. I felt, I thought, I did.
Oh my
Um,
God.
yeah, so there's another first for you.
Wow.
It I think there's like 40, 45, 49, 42 poems altogether. We're not going to read them all, but I just plucked a quote out that I think gives you a flavor of her devotion and the badassness of Inanna. So if you're happy to read this
Yes, I'll
this
try and
poem,
embody the badass of
yes,
Anana. I don't know.
get in
I
there.
don't know. I don't think I've ever done that. Like a charging storm, you charge. Like a roaring storm, you roar. You thunder in thunder, snort in rampaging winds. Your feet are continually restless. Carrying your harp of sighs, you breathe out the music of mourning. It was in your service that I first entered the holy temple. I, in Enheduanna, the highest priestess, I carried the ritual basket. I sang the hymns of joy. Oh, wow.
She's into it. She's so
Yeah.
into it. You
And
can't
also,
help
this
but be
is just as
excited.
passionate and is just as driven and just as heart hitting as those Octavia Butler quotes that we spoke about last week, which is so recent history, isn't it? Like, 50, 60
Yeah.
years ago. And that passion, I would say, is matched.
It's wild that that recognizable strand of being human and excited about your
Yeah,
job.
and
Like, who's that
passionate.
excited about their job? But she really is. She loves
She
it.
just loved a spreadsheet. That's all
She
I'll say.
loved it. Absolutely loved it. And to be fair to her, the gods were pretty cool. Mesopotamia was
There's
rocking
worse
the
gods,
spicy
worse
deities,
jobs to
right?
have, isn't there? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. If you were happy to, there is another quote here that describes Ishtar, the fearsome warrior. You good?
Yeah, in scenes carved on cylinder seals from the Akkadian period, Ishtar is often shown dominating formidable lions and gods while turning towards the viewer. Maces and sickle axes are seen around her shoulders as well as branching bearing fruit.
Just bringing a little
Oh.
snack. Fighting a lion, bringing a snack. I love her.
I mean, if you are going to fight a lion, you're going to need a blooming
You're
feast
going to want a
afterwards.
little, absolutely. You're
Yeah,
going
a
to
little
need a
bit of
little
a
pick
sugar
me up.
high. Yeah.
So, are you prepared for another first? Because that set of writings talking about Inanna and her many acts include this story about her destroying a mountain range as a punishment when it wouldn't bow before her. And
What?
in yeah, the mountain wouldn't bow to her, so she tore it down to punish it. I think she tore it down by yelling at it. That's who we're dealing with here.
Okay.
And that story contained the first illustration of a written text. So
No.
she invented comic books. There you go.
Ah.
And it mentioned it in the quote. It's a time when most depictions, as I picture Egyptian drawing, mostly people are seen in profile.
Like 2D.
This is her, yeah, like side on.
Yes. Yeah.
The goddess is looking straight at you. And
Right.
like Fleabag, she's breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah.
And you can imagine to the viewer how thrilling
And new and
and new
exciting.
and
Yeah.
exciting. And Enheduanna understood the energy that these things were bringing. She was bringing the drama.
Oh,
So
drama. I love it.
we've got another little micro quote here.
Yes. Let them know that you grind schools to dust. Let them know that you eat corpses like a lion.
Oh, it's gross. It's gross. But that ferocity is part of the Mesopotamian ideal of femininity.
Okay.
It's what it takes to survive in
Oh.
the kind of world and landscape that they are living in. And unfortunately for Enheduanna, she found that out the hard way herself because her father, having extended the empire out, died. And her position, as we've talked about, really was quite political. So
Yes.
it wasn't a massive surprise that the incoming would-be king wanted to move her along. A general named Lugalen took advantage of the power vacuum and saw Enheduanna as a threat. Didn't want, I think, to assassinate her because she had some broad support, so instead banished her to the desert. And of course, she wrote a poem about it, like you do when you're banished to a
Mm.
desert. So if you're happy to read another poem for us.
Yeah, of course. Why, um, what was the power structure that meant that this Lugalani came in? Was it?
I think it was a straight up coup d'etat. He
Yeah.
rolled in with an army,
Okay.
saw that Akkad had died and things were in chaos, and thought, I'm going to get in there, but had enough sense to see that Enheduanna had some support and had enough religious faith to be frightened of transgressing against a high priestess. Like he could
Right.
kind of deal with kicking her out, but he couldn't deal with the possibility of killing someone who was favored
Of
by the
murder.
gods.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it. That makes perfect sense. This is her in the desert.
This is her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh. I went towards the light. It felt scorching to me. I went towards shade. It shrouded me in swirling dust. When Lugalana stood paramount, he expelled me from the temple. He made me fly out the window like a swallow. I had my taste of life. He made me walk a land of thorns. Like a swallow. That still happens today. That's quite exciting. Land of thorns. These are all things that we still experience. Isn't that fascinating? Yeah.
You can sense her devastation because those
Oh my
images
gosh.
are relatable to us. So she's now out on her ear and thinking, what next?
Scary.
And she starts praying. She prays to Nana, the moon god, and he does not help her. And so she begins to address her prayers to Inanna.
Okay.
And very soon thereafter, her position as high priestess in Ur is restored.
Oh.
And yeah, so I mean, credit where it's due. Her nephew, Naramson, turfed out Lugalane
Okay.
and made himself king, and then reinstated Enheduanna. I don't know, he must have sent somebody out into the desert to find her. Popped her back into the temple in Ur, and she continued on in that position. And in total, she was the high priestess for 40 years. So
40.
it's a long
40.
career. It's a
That
long
is a long
career of
career.
high priestessing, especially when you have some desert wandering in the middle. So, having done those 40 years of service and the 40 odd poems and hymns was enough that her writing became a kind of cultural monument. And it was studied and celebrated for centuries. They had these schools called edubas, where scribes would train and priests would train and politicians would. And that was the text that they would copy out. Like, you know, when you're in school kind of doing lines or
Yes.
memorizing poems, it was her work that was what that was all based on. But like many things, her work was still eventually lost in time. And the poems, the tablets sort of disappeared until there was an archaeologist called Sir Leonard, I'm sure that's supposed to say Leonard Woolley.
Leonard Woolley.
Leonard Woolley. Maybe it was Leonard, but I think it might have been Leonard. Excavated some of her clay tablets in 1927,
Wow,
and that
that's
brought them back into modernity. So who knows in between, but that's where we next know about them.
That's where she pops up again. Yeah.
In 1968, the first translation of her writing from Sumerian into English is published. So there's almost a 40-year
To
window
decipher.
where it's getting work done. So the translators were definitely mega fans. There's a quote here from their intro to their book. They did.
The quote says, "We can now discern a corpus of poetry, which not only reveals its author's name, but delineates the author for us autobiographical fashion. In the person of Enheduanna, we are confronted by a woman who was once princess, priestess, and poetess." Yeah.
Yeah. They cannot get enough of her.
So they were doing her PR for her, really. With
They
that
were puffing it
alliteration.
up. I mean, they did have a book to sell, so you know they might have been
well,
like,
there you go. Capitalism.
but
Also.
yeah, I think it was genuine passion.
Good.
That being said, that in the intervening time since the publication of that book, scholars have disagreed about her role.
Because when you were talking about this, I was like, how do we know? How? Right. It's a fair question, isn't it?
It's not just you. It's on everybody's mind. We don't have the source materials. We don't have her personal documents. We have the transcribed copies. And so there's a woman called Eleanor Robson who's an expert in cuneiform.
What's
and
that?
She's the written pictogram system that these tablets were written in.
Yeah.
And she says that the Sumerian language in Enheduanna's work so-called,
Mm.
is stylistically too modern to have been from Enheduanna herself. So it would be
Right.
like an original Shakespeare transcript being written in modern English with slang. So she's like,
Fine.
wait a minute, guys. So she thinks that the transcribers had more than a copyist's hand in it. And,
Mm.
that's fair. Another,
Don't you think that's true for all stories? They get passed on generation by
yeah,
generation, and I know things are often word perfect, aren't they? Particularly fables and things like that. Like we spoke about it a bit in the Grace O'Malley episode. But you don't know. You don't know whose
you
granddad's
can't.
granddad said that before. Yeah,
And when things are in translation, there's an added layer of abstraction. You
of
do not
course.
know if I interpret something a certain way, probably in good faith, thinking this is exactly what was meant. That
Bays and
doesn't mean that
bars.
you are going to
Yeah,
say the same. Yes, face
100%.
and bars. And even the poems we've included here, if you were to Google them, you would find different English, like the bit
Right.
where it says you thunder and thunder. I think at another version of it says you bellow and thunder. And it's
Oh, that's
those little
interesting.
subtle, and someone might just think, oh, it sounds better like this. And
Meh.
yeah, have a little tinker. You don't know.
Mm.
On top of that, there is a scholar called Haider al-Mamori that put it that with centuries of oral literature from hundreds of women before Enheduanna, you cannot say that the narrative of fiction is hers alone, because she's just writing what has already been happening for all of human existence, right?
Right.
And I take all of that on board as I say these things, but I'm leaning towards this writer. I've got a quote here from Megan Blythe, but she took Enheduanna's corpus, her body of poems, and turned it into a novella, which I think sounds pretty fun.
Mm.
Like, I'd like to read that. But she talks about how she decided to do that. And she says that reading the work and seeing its relevance, it wasn't just some person 4,000 years ago whose life is so vastly different from mine. Enheduanna wrote about how she got kicked out of power and it was really bad, and then she
Right.
came back.
Yeah.
And
These are
that's
her
the
experiences. You
it,
can't take
and
that.
you can't, and you can understand it even from a
Yeah.
modern perspective.
Damn right.
And it's what makes it
Heard of
lasting
Kamala
literature.
Harris?
Yeah, it's echoing something familiar, even though it's from a time that's completely
Mm.
unfamiliar.
I love that. Don't you love that we have
Yeah.
strings of attachment to millennia ago and civilizations? Because we talk about this with Simon sometimes, that it goes in my head, in my very simplistic mind, it goes dinosaurs. It goes um ancient
Tudor.
Egypt, yeah, then it goes Tudor, Shakespeare, Queen Victoria today. That's it.
It's so cool to realize that these are just people, just like
Yeah,
us. And
just like
I
us.
I used to work with this history teacher who was so terrifying. He was really,
No,
I'm going to use the word mean. He was just straight up mean.
well,
He was mean as a snake.
it was
There,
a
I've said it.
fun one.
But one thing he always said that really struck me was, if you took a person from ancient times, they would survive in our world and we would not survive in theirs, because
Mhm.
they are equipped to sort of cope with threats. We
Right.
are not. But we have this common thread of humanity and emotion across all those millennia.
We
And
could survive. We could.
you and me,
Yeah.
or like in
We.
general, you and
Um.
me, you might
Sorry.
want to revise that opinion. If we go to the bird sanctuary at 4 a.m., see if you still think I would
Let's see if
survive
we
in
think that
ancient
later.
Mesopotamia.
And
Well, all that's left to say really is, like, the exhibition that some of the source material was based on presents Enheduanna as the first named author. In fact, no doubts overshadowing it.
oh, they say no doubt.
No doubt, they plow
Oh,
straight on as though it is an established fact. But
right.
I think that the work that we've seen of hers has merit, even if we allow for the uncertainty, because you still get that sense of the lives of Mesopotamian women,
Yeah.
the way they lived, the things they struggled with, and they show the power of literature to move people. And I've got a cheesy ending. You know, I love a cheesy ending.
Well,
So
even this isn't. I was just thinking, what a beautiful insight that is for you to conclude. You're like, well, who cares?
yeah,
Like,
that's
they're
my conclusion
lovely
on
and
most
tell a
topics,
great
to be
story.
fair.
This is my
Yeah, it's all
life.
good. Whatever. Whatevs.
I think you
So
said it far more
you
elegantly than that.
you could thank you. You can trim this bit off if you want, if you think it's
Yeah.
gilding the lily. But I've gone with, we can choose to picture Enheduanna not only as a historical figure, but as a kind of stand-in for all of the unnamed women who told those stories,
No, I love it.
and maybe the first to lift a reed stylus and capture life in the drying clay.
Nice. Oh,
Have you time for 3 fun
for
facts?
you, anything.
Thank you so much. I'll keep them quick. First one, Enheduanna, it's not just me. So my fellow gaming enthusiasts have popped her in to Civ 6 and in Seven Wonders. She is
What?
she's I think a playable leader in Civ 6, one of the
Nice.
expansions. The second thing I will say is that the capital of the Akkadian Empire, Akkad, has not yet been discovered. So,
Okay.
whereas the ruins of, I think, Ur and Sumer were, Akkad's still out there. They think it might be near Baghdad. Nobody knows for sure. So, more of her tablets might come to light. You never know.
Oh, this is exciting.
And the final one, not about Enheduanna, but again about just cuneiform tablets, is there is a tablet from Ur in which a trader called Nani moans at a supplier called Ea Nasir about the quality of the order of copper he was sent.
We've spoken
And
about this on the pod before. It's the
yeah,
most hilarious thing.
I love that people are, "Oh, I think you'll find." So cuneiform, right from jump, right from the get-go, people are out there doing their
It's the
negative Trustpilot
funniest thing.
reviews.
I just find it hilarious that someone sat there for hours, like
Tap, tap,
scribbling
tap,
this thing.
tap. Yeah, with their reed stylus. Dear
We must have
sir,
seen the same. We must be so on the same algorithm or something for us both to see.
you're probably how I know that.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I just find it the
I
most
love it.
hilarious thing about the quality of copper.
Yeah, well, it's a serious business, actually. I
Actually,
think
I'm
you'll
going to
find
spend most of my
it's the
life.
principle of the thing. There will be
Yeah,
a Sumerian equivalent of the phrase, it's the principle of the
the
thing.
principal.
Yeah. So that's it. That's what I've got for
Oh my
you.
gosh, what a gorgeous
That's it.
insight into and the clay and the make and like I love how you call it technology because it is.
Yeah, it's
Technology isn't
weird to think of
silver
it that
and
way.
wires and microchips, is it? It's just things that make things automated or
It
quicker.
makes life easier,
Yeah.
quicker. Yeah, exactly. And that looks like different things at different times.
Yes. Cara, I loved it. Smashed it. Thank you
I
so
thought that
much.
was so, thank you. Thanks for listening. I thought it was so fun to research. So I'm
Don't
glad
really
that,
need to go out of your comfort zone. Look at you
I know.
launching,
Is there any
flexing.
further back to go? I mean, where do I stop?
Where
I'm,
do I
I'm like a juggernaut now. Where am I going next? Who
uh,
knows?
uh.
Thank you for listening to this episode of She Changed History. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and comment below. Find us on our socials, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. If you've got any ideas of women you'd like us to cover in a future episode, please comment on the socials or email us at shechangedhistory@gmail.com. Catch you next time.